Ever feel like you're the one always going the extra mile, trying to be a good person, doing what's right, and yet somehow you end up feeling like you're constantly getting overlooked or even, taken advantage of?
Yeah, that gap between how we think things should work out and how they often actually do. It's a really common frustration.
Definitely. We're kind of sold this bill of goods, aren't we? That if we're just like purely kind and have good intentions,
the world will reward you naturally.
Exactly. But the reality can feel, well, pretty different sometimes.
It really can.
And that's the knot we're trying to untangle today.
Yeah.
We've got some really compelling insights here from a fascinating analysis, let's say.
Yeah.
Looking at strategic navigation, basically. And it really challenges that simple be good and good will follow idea.
Okay.
It even draws on some, classic strategic thinking ideas that might feel a bit, I don't know, Machiavellian.
Okay. So our goal here is to dig into why those good intentions sometimes just don't land, why they don't get the results we expect.
Right.
We'll be exploring this particular perspective, which suggests that maybe kindness alone, it might not be the whole strategy you need for, navigating the world.
So what's in store for you as we take this deep dive? We're going to look at why just being innocent, maybe a little naive, can sometimes backfire. How incredibly influential our image actually, how others see us.
Huge.
And the surprising power that comes from, well, acting a bit more strategically.
Okay, let's get into it.
Okay, so let's unpack this first big idea.
Yeah.
The illusion of kindness. I mean, from childhood, we're taught, right? Being good is the ultimate virtue. It should be enough.
It's really baked into how we think society works. Or should work.
Yeah.
However, the strategic analysis we're looking at here, it offers a slightly different take. It suggests that, kindness is valuable, obviously, but it isn't always sufficient for navigating challenges or, getting where you want to go.
And it really makes you stop and think about your own experiences, doesn't it? Like, how many times have you felt like your good nature hasn't exactly paid off?
Right.
Times where maybe you got passed over for something or ignored.
Or even felt exploited, maybe. Someone leaning on your willingness to help.
Totally. It makes you wonder if there's a different game being played that you just didn't get the memo on.
Precisely. And this is where we bump into a perspective that, it's centuries old, but it still kind of hits home.
Right.
You mentioned Machiavelli.
Yeah.
He had a pretty direct view of human nature, didn't he? Suggesting, self-interest is a big driver.
A huge driver.
And people aren't always predictable or, frankly, nice. So from that viewpoint, being virtuous without any sort of strategic awareness, that can actually be a weakness.
A vulnerability.
Yeah. Just being good without a plan can actually lead you into traps.
So the question is, how often have you felt kind of trapped by your own niceness? Your desire to be helpful or agreeable?
Yeah.
Those times you felt you had to say yes, but you really wanted to say no.
And it cost you time, energy, maybe even an opportunity.
Exactly.
And that's the key point here. This analysis we're looking at, it subtly suggests that people who gain influence, who find success, they probably aren't just running on kindness.
There's something else going on.
There's likely a layer of strategic thinking, some calculated action mixed in.
And here's where it gets really interesting. This perspective even hints that maybe morality itself can be used strategically.
How so?
Like, it's not about being bad, but about understanding that knowing when to show that virtuous side and when to perhaps be a bit more reserved, more guarded, that can actually be beneficial. It's very pragmatic.
It is pragmatic. Okay, so let's think about why just being good might not cut it. This need for self-protection, for strategic savvy.
Yeah.
This analysis really challenges that maybe slightly naive belief that everyone you meet is operating by the same ethical playbook you are.
It's that assumption, isn't it, that everyone plays fair. But this viewpoint, it warns us. It says there can be individuals out there, let's call them opportunists.
Okay.
Who are pretty good at spotting and, frankly, taking advantage of people who are more trusting or maybe less strategically aware. It even uses that stark phrase, predators disguised as friends.
Oof. Yeah, that's direct. So this leads to the idea of, smarter kindness.
Smarter kindness. I like that.
It's not about ditching kindness altogether, not at all, but about pairing it with a realistic understanding of how things actually work.
So like developing your radar.
Right.
Reading people better.
Exactly. Anticipating motivations, knowing when to put your guard up a little, when caution is just smart.
And this links back to that famous, often controversial idea. It's better to be feared than loved if you can't have both.
Right. Which sounds harsh on the surface.
It does. But this analysis kind of prompts us to ask ourselves, honestly, how we, maybe prioritize being liked and accepted above all else.
And what happened? What was the result?
Yeah. Did it lead to situations where maybe your boundaries got pushed? Or you just didn't feel respected?
That's the core reflection. The strategic view we're exploring, it's not saying don't be good. It's saying be good, but with your eyes open.
There's a difference between goodness and just. Naivety.
A huge difference. And that naivete can leave you really vulnerable.
Right. It's about realizing that while fairness is great, the world often seems to reward those who are strategically clever, not just the ones who mean well.
Which kind of redefines what being effective really means. It's not just about being agreeable all the time.
No.
It's finding that balance between your core values and just a healthy dose of practical awareness. Pragmatism.
Okay, so we're shifting towards this more strategic way of thinking about things. Let's talk about something the analysis really stresses: the power of perception, how others see us.
Oh, absolutely crucial. This viewpoint argues that in a lot of situations, maybe most, your image.
How you come across.
Yeah, how you're perceived by others, it can actually have a bigger impact than your actual skills or your intentions.
So like if you project weakness, even if you're strong inside.
People might treat you weakly, yeah. And conversely, projecting confidence, projecting capability that tends to earn respect.
It makes you think about those times maybe you held back in a meeting, didn't speak up.
Or accepted less than you thought you deserved just to avoid a fuss.
Yeah. And then later you kick yourself, realizing that by not asserting yourself, you might have actually lowered your own standing.
Precisely. And this strategic approach, it isn't about being mean or deceitful.
No.
It's about being deliberate in how you present yourself. Knowing when to be assertive, when to clearly state your value, and yeah, even when to strategically pull back.
Because unchecked, just pure, unconditional kindness, this analysis says it can accidentally signal a lack of strength.
It can, and the analysis makes a pretty bold claim here. The world doesn't automatically reward pure intentions.
What does it reward then?
Often, it values visible capability, a sense of security, the ability to make tough calls. And kindness, it suggests, actually has more impact when it's seen as coming from someone who also has strength. It uses that image. Don't be a lamb in a world full of wolves.
This is vivid.
It is. And the conclusion is that real effectiveness isn't just about passively fitting in. It's about intelligently shaping your environment, to some extent, to your advantage.
So the challenge for you, the listener, is maybe to think, how long will you let a purely innocent approach kind of dictate your experiences?
Yeah.
The goal, as this perspective puts it, is to operate with your ethics intact, but also with strategic awareness, knowing when to be subtle.
Move in the shadows, as it says.
Right. And when to be more direct, more assertive. Okay, let's go deeper on this, mastering your image and influence.
Yeah, this builds right on that perception point. The analysis is really clear. It's not enough to be smart or strong. You have to appear smart and strong.
The appearance matters that much.
In many real-world situations, the analysis argues the impression you make can actually be more decisive than the underlying reality of your skills.
And the examples it gives are things we've all seen, right? People who aren't maybe the most competent, but they climb the ladder anyway.
Or individuals who seem to just manipulate situations perfectly for themselves.
While genuinely good, honorable people get stuck.
Exactly. And this view says, look, that's probably not just random chance. People are often drawn to and they follow those who project an aura of being in control.
So kind of burst that bubble, that comforting idea that if you just do good work and you're competent, you'll automatically get noticed and rewarded.
It challenges it, yeah. It suggests that success often flows to those who are good at communicating their value, at selling their version of the story.
It keeps coming back to that core idea. What others believe about you can matter more than the objective truth. Perception is incredibly powerful.
Hugely powerful. And the analysis points out the downsides if you neglect your image. Like a leader who seems unsure, even if they have a great plan.
People won't follow, no confidence.
Right. Or an employee who does great work but doesn't make it visible.
Gets overlooked for promotion. Happens all the time.
Or someone who just doesn't project their own worth. They end up being undervalued regardless of what they actually bring to the table.
So just to be clear, this isn't about being fake or putting on an act.
No, the perspective distinguishes that. It's about consciously shaping how you're seen, strategically highlighting your actual strengths and capabilities. It's management, not necessarily deception.
Okay, managing the narrative.
Exactly, because people see the world through their own filters, right? Their assumptions, biases, emotions.
Sure.
The key, according to this, is to understand those filters and learn how to present yourself strategically so you resonate positively. Because a weak appearance...
Well, the analysis is blunt. It can lead to weak treatment.
So mastering perception is really about taking control of how you're understood and valued. Okay, let's shift gears a bit to another fascinating piece. The strategic use of information, and even silence.
Oh yeah, this is a really potent one. The analysis points out that people with influence often hold exclusive knowledge. That gives them an edge.
Right. And it challenges that perhaps idealistic idea that total openness, just sharing everything you know, is always the best policy.
That feeling that you should be completely transparent.
Yeah. This perspective suggests, well, that might feel virtuous, but just spilling everything can actually make you quite vulnerable.
Okay.
It echoes that classic strategic advice, right? Keep your true intentions somewhat close to your chest. Not necessarily to be dishonest.
But for strategic advantage.
Exactly. In a world where, let's face it, not everyone is rooting for you.
So it's about being selective. Deciding what to reveal, when to reveal it.
Sharing information intentionally. And keeping some things private. This analysis argues that a little bit of mystery can actually create intrigue. It can make people respect you more.
Whereas if you're just an open book,
your moves become predictable. And if you're predictable, you're easier to manage, maybe even easier to exploit.
Makes sense.
And then there's the power of strategic silence, which this analysis says can be just as powerful, if not more so, than anything you say.
Really? Silence?
Yeah. Think about influential figures. Often they know when to just hold back, to observe, to listen, and only speak when it serves a clear purpose.
So it's distinguishing between being genuinely open and just being unguarded.
Precisely. Not sharing every single thought isn't the same as being deceitful. It's about managing the flow of information thoughtfully.
Okay. Have you ever felt, like you had to fill every awkward silence in a conversation?
Oh, totally. Or felt the need to over-explain every decision you make?
Yeah. This analysis makes us ask, did that actually help you? Did it serve your interests?
It really focuses on the dynamics. True power, this view suggests, often lies in choosing when to speak and, maybe more critically, when to stay silent.
Because those who talk less explain less.
They can command more attention, more respect sometimes, just because their words, when they do come, seem to carry more weight. There's less noise.
So it's the impact of carefully chosen words versus just letting it all hang out, allowing for some interpretation.
Exactly. Okay, let's explore another strategic tool mentioned here, which sounds maybe a bit edgy. The art of unpredictability.
Unpredictability.
That seems counterintuitive. Aren't we supposed to be consistent, reliable?
Usually, yeah, that's what we're told. But this analysis flips that slightly. It suggests that a degree of unpredictability can actually be a strategic plus.
How does that work?
Well, the thinking is, if your actions, your reactions, are totally predictable.
People know how to push your buttons.
Exactly. They can anticipate your moves, maybe manipulate you. Unpredictability throws a wrench in that. It introduces uncertainty.
Which makes people more cautious around you.
Potentially. And that caution can translate into more influence for you.
The analysis connects this to leadership too, right? Saying a leader who's too predictable might seem weaker.
Yeah, compared to one who's more adaptable, whose next move isn't always obvious. It keeps people on their toes, maintains a certain edge.
So this perspective kind of asks you directly, do you want to be that open book, easily read by everyone? Or someone whose strategy, whose intentions, aren't always immediately clear?
It really circles back to that core theme, doesn't it?
Really?
That just being purely predictable, purely transparent, can leave you exposed.
It's about understanding the game, the dynamics at play.
And by maybe adding a little strategic unpredictability.
The analysis suggests you can shift. Shift from just reacting to things to actually being someone who can shape events more. Now let's consider another angle, the power of strategic distance.
Okay, this one also challenges a common assumption. Right?
Okay.
That being constantly present, always available, equals importance.
Right. We think visibility is everything. But this analysis argues the opposite sometimes. Being too available can actually make you seem less valuable.
Like the law of supply and demand.
Kind of. It suggests scarcity can increase desire, and that strategically creating a bit of distance can actually boost your impact.
You know, you think about certain people who just seem to command attention when they walk into a room. This perspective suggests that might come from how they manage their availability. They aren't just always there.
And again, it echoes classic strategic advice. Don't be overly familiar. Don't be too accessible. That can erode respect. And the analysis says this isn't just for princes or CEOs.
It applies everywhere. Relationships, work,
all sorts of interactions. The idea is if you give too much of yourself too readily,
people take you for granted.
Exactly. You become a resource, maybe, instead of a valued individual. It prompts that reflection. Have you ever been the one who's always there for people?
And maybe didn't get the same consideration back. Felt ignored sometimes.
Yeah. There's a psychological thing there. Abundance gets devalued. Scarcity is often more desired.
So the advice is?
Regulate your presence. Be mindful about who gets your time and energy. Don't feel obligated to be instantly responsive to everything and everyone.
Make your absence felt sometimes.
Make it noticeable, yeah. And the potential payoff, according to this view, when you manage your presence more strategically, people might actually start seeking you out more.
What about the fear of just disappearing, though? If you pull back too much?
The analysis addresses that. It suggests if your only way of being significant is through constant availability, well, that's all you'll be known for. It might actually hide your deeper value.
So it contrasts being constantly on with the power of knowing when to step back.
And when to reappear, effectively. Showing up when it really counts, that has more impact.
Okay. Now let's dig into something often overlooked in these discussions. Emotional control as a strategic tool.
Oh, this is absolutely critical in this framework. True control, the analysis argues, isn't about being loud or aggressive. It's about mastering your own emotional responses.
Because losing control
makes you predictable, makes you easy to manipulate. It ultimately makes you look and feel less effective, less powerful in this context.
Think back, it asks, to a time someone really got under your skin, made you lose your cool.
Yeah.
In that moment, who really had the power? Often, it was the person who triggered your reaction.
That's a great point. So if you can control your emotions, you gain more control over your actions.
And how people see you.
Right. The analysis suggests a strategically minded person acts with a certain coolness, a calculation. Not that they don't have feelings.
But they aren't ruled by them.
Exactly. Avoid being purely reactive.
And the impact of staying composed.
This perspective suggests it makes you more resilient, almost invincible to manipulation and provocation. If people can't easily guess how you'll react emotionally,
they lose a key way to influence you.
Yeah. The final thought here is pretty potent. The people who stay calm, stay focused when everything around them is chaos, they often hold the real influence.
Okay, that leads us to the final key element from this analysis, strategy and the crucial role of patience.
Right. This directly tackles our tendency to want results now, immediately.
And patience is common.
Very. But this analysis contrasts that with the need for strategic patience to build real, lasting influence. It argues that while impulsive moves and short-term thinking are everywhere, true impact often comes from those who can observe, plan carefully, and wait for the right moment.
It uses that analogy of a hunter, right, waiting patiently for the perfect time to act.
Exactly. It's not always about being first. It's about acting at the most effective time, adapting as things unfold.
So it's that contrast again.
Yeah.
Impulsive reaction versus strategic waiting.
And it asks you, the listener, to think about your own style. Are you generally impulsive, or do you tend towards strategic patience?
And the ultimate point is that influence, in the strategic sense, doesn't just go to the loudest or the pushiest.
No, it belongs to those who are strategically smart, those who master perception, information, distance, their own emotions, and patience.
Okay, so to kind of wrap up the key shifts we've explored from this analysis, we've looked at moving beyond just simple kindness, that naive approach,
towards embracing more strategic action.
Yeah, we've really hammered home how vital perception is how you're seen.
Definitely. And the strategic use of information, and even silence.
Plus the surprising benefits of a little unpredictability and managing your presence through strategic distance.
And then the internal stuff. The strength found in emotional control and the long game advantage of strategic patience.
And the big picture goal here, as this perspective sees it, is to become someone who maybe operates a bit outside the usual expectations.
An anomaly in the system, it calls it. Someone who doesn't just play by the established rules, but potentially starts to influence or even rewrite them.
Because just conforming
often leads to being average, being overlooked, maybe even forgotten. The analysis suggests that real agency, real impact, comes from breaking that mold.
Acting differently, being strategically unpredictable.
Holding your cards a bit closer, speaking when it really matters. With impact.
It really does reframe things. Maybe those times you felt ignored or invisible. It wasn't necessarily about your inherent worth.
But maybe more about a lack of strategic awareness and how you navigated that specific situation.
Yeah. And now, the big question for you, listening.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do with this? Will you take these insights and actually try to integrate them?
Or just slip back into the old, familiar patterns? Because the analysis is clear. Just knowing this stuff isn't enough.
Understanding is step one. Application is where the power is.
It even warns that not choosing to be more strategic is, in itself, a choice. Potentially a choice to continue being overlooked.
So where does someone even start? It feels like a lot.
The analysis suggests small steps. Deliberate ones, like try injecting just a little bit of mystery into an interaction.
Or be more mindful about how much you talk versus listen.
Respond with a bit more composure next time you feel provoked. Choose strategically when to engage fully and when maybe to pull back slightly.
Observe more before jumping in.
Exactly, small shifts. But done consistently over time, this perspective argues, they can lead to a pretty significant transformation, making you someone who isn't so easily ignored anymore.
So the final thought it leaves us with is really a challenge. Are you ready to start playing the game more strategically?
It even gives a concrete first step. Think about a past situation where maybe staying silent instead of speaking could have led to a better outcome. Just reflect on that.
And this is definitely just scratching the surface. There's so much more we could dig into around strategic thinking.
Oh, absolutely. We'll definitely revisit related ideas in future deep dives.
But ultimately, the shift we've been talking about today, based on this analysis, is about moving from just being a piece on the board, maybe,
to becoming someone who has a better understanding of the game and a greater ability to actually influence how it's played.